Welcome to today's explainer. Look, if you're anything like me, you absolutely love finding a clever workaround, especially when it comes to keeping our tanks running. Let's be real, equipping a proper aquarium gets expensive, fast. So there's this universal temptation we all face. Can we just save a few bucks by repurposing standard, everyday items from the local hardware store? It's a super compelling thought. You're walking down the lighting aisle, grabbing stuff for the house, and boom, you see rows of bright, dirt-cheap LEDs. But today, we're going to look at the hard data and the biology to see if this frugal shortcut actually holds water.
Okay, let's dive right into section 1, the hardware store temptation. This brings us to the core question posed by our source author, Eng. During a totally routine run to the hardware store for general house supplies, because as we know, the house always needs something fixed, Eng stumbled upon a standard T8 LED batten light, and having that natural curiosity we all share for fish keeping hacks, the immediate thought was, is this cheap hardware store LED actually suitable for a tank? I mean, it looks bright enough, it's super cheap, so why not?
Well, if your gut reaction is to say, yeah, I bet it works, you're actually in good company. Eng validates this frugal mindset with a bit of personal history. The author notes that years ago, they actually used these standard T8 LED lights as the main light source for more than 25 aquarium tanks. And guess what? They were proven to work rather well. Sure, there was a downside of a slightly higher electricity bill, but fundamentally, they blasted out light and the tanks functioned. That kind of historical success makes that hardware store aisle incredibly tempting. Now, what's really interesting here is pivoting from that anecdotal past success into a much harsher modern reality. Yes, it is incredibly tempting to just grab that cheap T8 batten and call it a day. But relying on it introduces some hidden, critical dangers. We're talking about risks lurking right beneath the surface that go way, way beyond just a slightly higher electric bill.
Which brings us to section 2, the water safety hazard.
So when you look at the packaging on that hardware store T8 LED, you're almost definitely going to see an IP20 rating. IP stands for Ingress Protection, and an IP20 rating means the fixture has absolutely zero protection against water, moisture, or splashes. By contrast, specialized aquarium lighting requires at least an IP65 or IP67 rating, meaning the unit is tightly sealed against the aquatic elements. Let's think about the actual reality of an aquarium environment for a second. It is definitely not a dry living room ceiling. An aquarium features constant condensation building up literally inches from the light source. There are inevitable water splashes, right? Especially when we're doing routine water changes or when your fish decide to get a bit too energetic at feeding time. It's a zone of persistently high humidity. So when you introduce a totally unshielded IP20 hardware store light into that specific environment, you are inviting disaster. You're risking short-circuiting, sudden light failure, or, worst of all, a catastrophic electrical shock. So the crucial point boils down to this simple equation. IP20 equals zero water protection. In an environment where water and humidity are the defining characteristics, having zero protection isn't just a minor drawback. It is a massive, non-negotiable safety hazard. It's absolutely not worth risking an electrical fire or a severe shock just to save 20 bucks up front.
All right, having covered the electrical dangers, let's move on to section 3, lumens versus plant radiation, and dig into the biological impact this has on your tank's ecosystem.
Now, to be totally fair to the hardware store light, it does offer a 6500K daylight color temperature. And you know what? That number is actually pretty good. 6500 Kelvin successfully mimics midday sunlight. To our human eyes, it looks incredibly crisp and bright. It's generally decent if you are only running a very basic freshwater setup or keeping super low light plants. Basically, it tricks us into thinking it's the perfect light source. But here is the biological catch. Typical household lights are engineered and measured based on general lumens. Lumens just measure how bright the light appears to human eyes. They are literally designed to light up your garage or your kitchen. Specialized aquarium lights, however, focus on a completely different metric, PAR. And by focusing purely on lumens, the hardware store light completely misses the specific biological metric that aquatic life actually requires to thrive. And this brilliantly illustrates why PAR is so critical.
PAR stands for Photosynthetically Active Radiation. It sounds super scientific, but it's just the specific spectral waveband of solar radiation that photosynthetic organisms, like your aquatic plants, algae, and even cyanobacteria, actively use to fuel photosynthesis. So lumens are for humans, but PAR is the actual literal fuel for aquatic life. If your light isn't producing the right PAR, your plants are essentially starving in plain sight, no matter how blindingly bright the tank looks to you. When you compare them directly, the differences are stark. Look at the primary metrics. The hardware store LED relies on general lumens, while a proper aquarium LED is built entirely around PAR. Then look at the spectrum. You get basic 6500K daylight from the hardware store, compared to a full spectrum RGB output from the specialized unit. But the real kicker? The reds and blues. The hardware store light is severely lacking in these crucial wavelengths, whereas a proper aquarium LED is absolutely packed with them. Missing those reds and blues is a critical failure for an aquarium ecosystem. Without these specific spectrums, your plants simply can't photosynthesize properly. They won't grow, they won't produce oxygen efficiently, and the whole ecosystem is going to struggle. Plus, there's a huge aesthetic penalty too. Without that full spectrum RGB output, the natural, vibrant colors of your fish just will not shine. They're going to look totally washed out under a standard household bulb, which defeats half the purpose of keeping them. So, we've examined the electrical safety and we've looked at the biology. Let's bring it all together in Section 4, the final verdict. Let's see how this builds into our final conclusion. Eng's journey went from that initial temptation of a cheap hardware store fix to a firm, undeniable rejection. And it boils down to these 3 steps of failure. Number 1, the IP20 rating means absolutely zero water protection, creating unacceptable electrical shock and short-circuiting risks. Number 2, standard LEDs focus purely on lumens for our eyes, completely ignoring the PAR required by aquatic life. And number 3, they entirely lack the necessary RGB spectrum, specifically those vital reds and blues, meaning your plants won't grow and your fish won't look their best. Which leaves us with this final thought to consider for your own setups at home. You've invested so much time, energy, and care into building a beautiful aquatic ecosystem. So when it comes to the fundamental safety of your home and the biological beauty of your tank, is a hardware store shortcut really worth the risk? Thanks for joining me on this explainer today, and I hope this helps you make the best, safest choices for your underwater worlds.